One thing I came to realize in the course of my research is there's, if anything, an inverse relationship between the social benefit a work provides and compensation. That is to say, the more your work benefits other people in some obvious way, the less they are likely to pay you for it. Whereas if it's unpleasant work, well, yes, we should pay you more, but by unpleasant they mean work that is unpleasant because you know you're not really benefiting anybody. This person is suffering because of the meaninglessness of their work, so, let's give them more money to do it. It doesn't make any sense, but it's a deeply internalized notion. I find myself sometimes saying, wow, I really enjoy this research. It's amazing that I get people to pay me to do it. And I think, wait a minute. It's useful research. I mean, this is I'm writing books that people read. I mean, why shouldn't I get paid money to do it? And it's somehow we're taught to feel it's wrong to do something that we enjoy because it's interesting and it benefits others. It's bizarre. I was never quite sure how many people really had bullshit jobs. I assumed that maybe 10–15%. After the sort of explosive reaction to the original article, I thought maybe it's as much as 20 or 25%. But I've seen surveys that say 37% of British people, 40% of people in Holland think their jobs basically make no real contribution to the world. And it could be even higher, because if you think about it, well, all right, these are people who know they have bullshit jobs, but there are people who have real jobs. People who are cleaners, people who do security work, who are water plants, do pest control, gardeners, but are working in support of bullshit, in the sense that, if I am the cleaner in a building where people are just working on some elaborate tax dodge, then I don't know, actually, that I'm doing real work in support of nonsense. And if you then take into consideration all the social harm done by bullshit jobs, the additional medical problems, social problems that are created by this, it's possible that 50% of the work that people do is actually useless, that we could just as easily not be doing it. This is exactly what capitalism wasn't supposed to do. The Soviet system, everybody remembers, if you wanted to buy a loaf of bread, it took 4 different people. One gave you a ticket, another person took the ticket, another person took the money. And they were trying to make up jobs. Now, capitalism is supposed to be lean and mean. It's supposed to be efficient. And all the other unpleasant aspects, the fact that it creates inequality, the fact that it creates alienation and misery, was supposed to be acceptable because at least it's efficient. But in fact, it doesn't seem to be particularly efficient at all if you ask the people who are doing these jobs. How can you get to a point where the competitive firms are employing millions of people that they don't really need? If this were the 19th century, probably there wouldn't be these jobs. Financialization, the fact that so many capitalist firms aren't really making or selling anything, well, that creates a different dynamic, because politics and economics become the same thing. In fact, it's useful to seem magnificent and powerful in order to influence politicians to allow you to extract even more money. There's enormous political pressure on corporations to create jobs. And in fact, trickle-down economics is based on the idea of if you give rich people money, they will create jobs. They even say in America, they call them job creators. It used to be, if you wanted to create jobs, you gave money to consumers, they would buy things, and employers would hire people to make and sell things. Well, if you just give money directly to the rich people, well, you don't have a lot of new demand, so what do? They're under political pressure to create jobs. The easiest thing for them to do is to hire useless, basically feudal retainers, flunkies, to sort of make them look good. And at least that way they can say, well, see, I'm producing jobs. In the survey that I saw, there's only one survey that broke it down by gender. And in that one, 40% of men said they had bullshit jobs and only 30% of women. So I think women are victims of the system, but partly because they're the ones who are made to do all the work. Because we have an image that it's women who are doing these useless office jobs. But often it's the men who are doing the useless jobs because the women who are supposed to be their assistants are actually doing their jobs. And I say at one point in the book, it would be really interesting if somebody, it's impossible, but it would be really interesting to know all the things attributed to men that were actually done by their secretaries. I have one friend, she went to an American military base to teach belly dancing to the wives of American soldiers. And she has an anthropology degree, and she ended up within 2 years writing the NATO withdrawal plan from a major area of conflict. I can't say which, because she ended up becoming the assistant to this guy who just said, "Here's 5 reports, synthesize them somehow. I can't be bothered." So she ended up like a military strategist just because the men couldn't be bothered to do it. She was smart. I'm sure she did a better job than he would have done. But I'm sure this happens throughout history. So a lot of times it's the women who look like they're doing the useless jobs, but they're actually doing everything. They say, well, why is it that women are often paid so much less than men, often for the same jobs? Maybe it's because women tend to do real jobs. If people are paid less, depending on how much their work benefits others, well, women are more likely to have jobs that actually benefit others. And as a result, they get less compensation. I'm actually quite sympathetic with reducing work time, but in some ways it's more complicated than it would have been 50 years ago. Back when most people were working single jobs, working 9 to 5, you could regulate and say, all right, we're going from an 8-hour day to a 6-hour day. But nowadays, so many people are working casualized, precarious jobs. So many people are doing contract work. You'd need a whole bureaucracy to enforce some of these things. And that itself would create even more bullshit jobs in a way. So I've been drawn more to basic income just because it seems the most simple solution and the solution that would be the least likely to create new levels of bullshitization, in the sense that basic income would actually reduce the size of government bureaucracy. And not only that, it would reduce those government bureaucrats who are basically the most obnoxious, who do the most harm. It's easy to imagine people doing unpleasant, hard work that needs to be done. What you wouldn't do is have anybody willing to sit in front of a computer console and pretend to work. Nobody would take bullshit jobs for any reason other than the money, and if a livelihood was provided to them, those jobs would disappear almost overnight. And I think a lot of the arguments that people use against basic income, the experience of bullshit jobs shows exactly why they aren't really true. One argument people use is they say, well, if you give people money to live, then a lot of people just won't do anything. No, they don't. They actually want to do things. People want to contribute to society. Maybe they don't want a job. Some do, some don't. Jobs are nice because you meet interesting people, and some people want to take care of their families. Some people want to contribute to their communities. People want to do something. So I don't think laziness is much of an argument, and bullshit jobs proves that. The other argument people make, and you hear this a lot, is, well, if you just gave people money and said, all right, everyone is free to decide for themselves how they wish to contribute to society, well, a lot of people are going to choose really stupid things. I mean, they'll do things they think are useful, but no one else will. Suddenly you'll have millions of bad poets. You'll have annoying street musicians. You'll have crazy crank scientists trying to invent perpetual motion devices. Well, okay, that probably will be true. But if 37 to 40% of people already think they're doing useless work, it's not going to be more than we have now. Second of all, they'll be a lot happier, I mean, at least the crank scientist will think they're doing something important, even though no one else will. It'll be a lot better than them highlighting forms all day. And third of all, if just one of those crazy scientists turns out to actually create a perpetual motion device, or to be Einstein, if just one of those bad musicians turns into Miles Davis or John Lennon, if just one of those bad poets is Shakespeare, well, you probably got all of your money back just from that one guy.